Setting the scene. So the eSports market worldwide is projected to reach a revenue of almost 4 billion by the end of 2023. It's expected to show an annual growth rate of almost 10%, resulting in a projected market volume of 6 billion by 2028. And in terms of a user base, eSports is expected to have a total of 1 billion or so users by 2028. So, Ralf was infamous for saying 10 years ago, it's about when, not if. And of course, he's being proven correct. No wonder markets around the world are battling for a market share of this eSports business community. So, Ralf, eSports World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly is it and why is it happening?
Good question. I mean, look, if you look at esports, how it is built, it's very bottom up, very game centric, like a lot of about traditional sports that happen. There's big competitions all across the world, but there is up until now nothing that unites the industry and that goes in traditional sports. If you look at the athletics championship, which have different disciplines, or the Olympics, which have different disciplines, none of those concepts in the past have become critical mass. So it's very individual sports based. And the kingdom, right, with the crown prince saw this as an opportunity, and we've built a non-profit, the Esports World Cup Foundation, which is different than the traditional esports market as well, where most of the entities and the ones I've built are all commercial. This is a non-profit, a platform to make this one of the largest sports in the world. That is the groundwork, so to speak. And the Esports World Cup itself brings, for the first time, all the best games to one place, to one competition. It's different than the traditional sports equivalents. It's around clubs. So the big prize, the Esports World Cup as well, is for the best team. It's for the best esports team in the world, which prevails across these different disciplines. It's bringing in life-changing prize money. So even though, as you said, esports has already grown big, it's relevant, it has scale, it in some demographic is already the largest sport, right? But the money you just talked about, the 4 billion, is still relatively small if you think about it on a global scale. So what the foundation and the Esports World Cup is doing is giving more opportunities to players, and hopefully it's for the first time a global platform to make these global stars, because every sport strives on its stars. And even in the panels before, I don't know how many times we heard the names Ronaldo and Neymar, probably more often than FIFA. So there's a point to this, right? So our job is to make these players actually household names. And then the fourth piece, and that is connected again to a lot of the economic agenda, is to have a big festival attached to it, a fan festival, as you know from traditional sports, in games that can be much broader. And I've not heard about big sports trade fairs, consumer-oriented sports trade fairs, right? That's usually B2B ones, but there's plenty of big video game conferences across the world which are consumer-driven. So the video game industry as the underlying industry to esports, to bring that together and create a mix between Disney World and the biggest trade fairs, that is kind of the fourth USP and feature of the Esports World Cup. But again, after all, it's really the first time all these games come together, and hopefully brings this to the next level.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack in all of that. The not-for-profit focus is a very interesting one. So you're saying that the Esports World Cup is not-for-profit. That particular event is not about raising money. It is about raising awareness.
Yes.
And offering a platform for the global players to become celebrities, and for the teams to grow a global fan base. That's the sole purpose.
100% correct. If you're looking for a job, we can talk.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So what will this World Cup achieve, do you think, for esports then, that hasn't yet been done? Because you could argue that these players are already becoming celebrities, and they're already being, their awareness is being raised on a global platform. But why the World Cup in particular?
Well, I think it's the sheer scale. And if you look at the disciplines, usually there's a game that is big in China, there's a game that's big in North America, there's a game that's big in Europe, and there's some who are big in 2, 3 of those regions, or in MENA, right? So let me not be so centric. But there is very few games now which are going across all of the places in the world, all of the geographies. By us combining all of those games and doing the meta story about it around the clubs, gives us an opportunity to bring all these communities together and B, geographies. And to become a global star, you need global fandom, you need global audience, you need all of those things which are usually there regional, and bring them all together. So that is kind of the tactical move number one. The opportunity number two is the sheer scale. I mean, look, it's there is a reason why the biggest stars in the sports world are built on the biggest stages, on the ones that matter most. And we think we can add value to the already existing stages in esports. So this is not meant to replace anything that's out there in the ecosystem. It's not meant to be better and compete with everyone else. It's really positioned to bring it all together and tell that meta story and help the tides to rise.
So it's absolutely complementary to everything that's
100%.
been done to date. Fantastic. Yeah. It's a really interesting point you make about the geographical influence, because arguably if you look at a lot of the traditional sports events, whether it's the Olympics or World Cups, a lot of the content, a lot of the disciplines within there are historically Western-based disciplines. Yep. Some exceptions in the Olympics, like table tennis and badminton, for example. But if you look at the games, for example, quite a few are designed in China, for example. So this is a real opportunity to actually create a truly global discipline.
100%. And even if you look at today, what are the biggest video games in China, which, by the way, is the largest video game market in the world, right? By a huge margin. It's some games that are actually in a lot of the developing markets. So PUBG is one, as an example. Extremely popular in India, extremely popular in Indonesia, Vietnam, and all of those markets. And then if you look at what's the biggest game in North America, you would argue it's Call of Duty or something like this. Yep. Which is actually non-existent even in China. So there is a lot of, and then China again, there's a genre even, right? Which is, so it's games, genres, so it will get complicated now. But the genre of MOBA, the largest game in China, is a mobile game. It's called Honor of Kings, while the largest game in North America is League of Legends. Anyway, we can bring those together, and it is actually a hard job, and that's why it's positioned so well in the kingdom, because usually, as you said, you have a Western view or you have an Eastern view. And with the Middle East, and specifically the kingdom being right in the middle, we can absolutely be the gate from the East to the West and vice versa. So bringing these communities together, bringing these different game cultures together, and trying to make it really a global phenomenon in this. We're doing it for the first time next year, so I'm not trying to say, this is easy and we're going to succeed in year one, but the idea is absolutely there, and it's a unique opportunity which, few other sports have, specifically because country boundaries are not as relevant, even though we're talking about China. It's more about the markets, really, than the true countries in it.
That's a fascinating point, which we were discussing earlier about, again, most traditional global events are country versus country, and there is a national passion and connectivity. Whereas in esports, it's not country v country, it is club v club. Yeah. And so that's a completely different dynamic that the eSports World Cup brings to the world.
Yes, and I mean, it's a very, very deliberate decision, right? If you look at history / where the sport come from, and I'm a football player, right, by heart and trade. and my brother is somewhere in the audience, and he even was a professional football player.
He was a good one in the family.
Yeah, I lacked the talent. No, I was by far the worst. But anyway, so what is automatically happening in any traditional sport is that you compete with people who are in your vicinity, who live around you, who are incredibly regional to where you are. Why? Because you have no other choice, right? We're not traveling for 2 days to play a football match at a grassroots amateur level. It's not happening. And if I think about it, I maybe have had, I don't know, 150 official football matches or something like this. And I think 1 or 2 of them I played against people from other countries. Because it's just how it is, right? It's not happening on the amateur side. While when I compete in eSports, which I play still every day, I think I did less than 2% of my matches against people from my country. So by design, by default, it doesn't have physical boundary. Means I am playing people from at least my continent, because there's still a physical problem with light and the time light travels between here and China. But anyway, the core idea is that I am not bound to physical spaces, borders, and I play against people from all over the world every single day and every single time. What did that do to the sport? It created a way where the anchor point, the story point, is either the player or the club, but never really the country, because it just doesn't happen. So to make an eSports World Cup, which is authentic as possible, brings together the world, and is actually true to where it comes from, you need to go with clubs. It's not a risky decision. It's not a gamble. It's the opposite. It's how the world is designed in digital sports. So that's why we went for it. That doesn't mean that there is never going to be country competitions in esports, right? It's right now almost non-existent. But the whole concept of national pride, and we discussed this as well, is powerful. It bears a lot, and there's a reason why the FIFA World Cup is the largest sports event in the world, right? Because it is built on national pride. It goes extremely mainstream with it, and it's relevant to my mom, while any other sport is not. Saying that, though, being focused on clubs and being therefore, we've heard this word before, incredibly inclusive. Right, everyone can be a fan of a club. You can pick it. It's not by design. It's not by where you've born. It's not by who your parents are. It's solely your choice where, who, and how you identify with and align with, and where your values get connected to. So it's a fantastic opportunity, missing national pride, but making this your choice and making this about you and what you associate with, rather with what you're associated with.
That's fascinating, because actually, again, in some more traditional sports, there's a theory that the club is relative to the individual player diminishing in importance, and particularly the next generational fan is becoming more focused or attached or passionate about the player. Rather than their club. I know my generation, certainly your club was for life, but now it doesn't seem. And how far down that line are you in esports, in the player becoming so significant in the fan as opposed to the club?
I think what you said, the nuances are important. It's relative.
Yeah.
Right? Do you think that clubs have absolutely lost relevance? Probably not. No. Right? But the players have gained significant relevance. And why that is because media is not centrally organized anymore. It's decentralized with social media. That means there's a platform out there where players can become stars, independent of their clubs almost. Right? So I think it's not that this has gone down the club layer, but the player level has gone dramatically up. So saying that, the same is true in esports, right? There's a lot of players who are bigger than their clubs. That is extremely natural almost. But what we haven't talked about now is where are countries actually in that relevance? And if I look specifically in football, I mean, Messi and Ronaldo are bigger than the German national team. specifically to kids, specifically to everyone. I have a 9 and 12-year-old, right? They will maybe know Neuer from the German national team, and Müller, but that's about it. But all of them know the global football stars. So again, the Ronaldo and Messis of this world have probably become more relevant, except for that World Cup moment, than the national teams by a landslide. So I think that is a trend, but it's less about the clubs being less relevant than the national team. So I would almost put it a little bit to the side, while I don't disagree.
Yeah. Just going back to the location of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia hosting the World Cup, if you look at traditional sports, not only events, broadcast revenue is a huge part of that revenue pie. Presumably, that's different in eSports. And the fact that it happens to be in a central time zone from a broadcast perspective is less important. Would that be fair?
No. And let me explain why. So if you look at what means broadcasting rights means an agency, TV channel, buys your content and resells it to their customers. And either they monetize it by subscription or by advertisement, depending on the market, depending on the level and layers. And historically, it was all advertisement-based, and later on became subscription-based. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but actually all the big rights are subscription-based right now, which is nothing but a user monetization.
Yep.
It's an indirect one because there's a middleman, but in the end of the day, the fan pays for it. I think that this model wasn't popular in the beginning of the sports, and if you can ask many people, is ultimately going to be the downfall of the sports, right? Because you're creating a barrier to entry for my mom, for the mainstream fan to be part of it. And frankly, I know many people who have left sports watching it live simply because of that. B, it comes from a time 20 years ago where content was still scarce. There was a very limited amount of content. And we're living now in the world where, with the internet, with the amount of global content, with Serie A having, Arabic TikTok channels, the content competition will go higher and higher and higher. And for the top, that doesn't mean much because it's just going up. But for everything second class, the reality of being a good direct-to-consumer business or indirect-to-consumer business will probably go away. So you're either in the very top or you're non-existing. So monetization will continue to go up for the top properties, but will be a big challenge for everything second class and second division. I think that's my opinion on traditional sports. What does it mean for eSports, though? It hasn't got that step to be subscription-based, and it might never get, just because it competes as well with playing. There's a big difference of football. To play football is really rough. You need to find, go outside. There's tons of barriers to do it. In video games, it's actually not. Right? So even there's a big difference when I see the World Cup final or whatever final in football, it will take me 2 days to be on the pitch and try this out myself. Just an average, because then there's next training and so on and so forth. In video games, right after that match, turn on my PC and play exactly that tactic that they played in the final. Right? So the barrier is much shorter. So what I'm saying is that there's different alternatives to watch if it's behind a subscription base. So I think that ultimately the consumer will pay, but just differently. It will not pay via a subscription. It will pay by buying the items of the winning club in the game. Yeah. And, using that shirt, actually, that digital merch, the minute after that club has won in the game, and you're going to make the same amount of money. That's still a little bit far out. It's still not unproven. It's actually proven in some games, but it's still not developed properly. But Media rights will play a role because it's relevant content, and there's always money to be made about relevant content, but not in this extraordinary way it has been done in traditional sports, because I don't think it's ever going to jump on that subscription layer, but it's going to jump in direct integration with the games, and therefore you monetize the consumer, same but different. So complex answer, sorry for...
No, that's fantastic insight. Let's just look at the fan for a minute. So we all know that the age demographic of the eSports fan is lower than the traditional sports fan. Having spoken for years to traditional sports about how do they really engage with the next generational fan, what do they need to do to adjust their content, their distribution channels, their channels to market and everything else. Quite a few for many years have been saying, well, we need to get into eSports, create an eSports piece of content or longer term content to get to that fan, to then hopefully convert them to a traditional sports fan as they grow older. Is that going to work, or are they very separate?
Honestly, it's still too early to say, right? Because that's a 5-year discussion, not a 20-year discussion, and things like this take forever. I spoke to a lot of traditional sports rights holders. I've been involved with that, right? And I always said and believe that first you need a game strategy, then you can have an esports strategy, because the game is the underlying pitch. Without that, you can't play football without a pitch. Doesn't work. So I think that's topic number one. If you have the right game, then I think the biggest problem always is in the discussion, like, hey, we'll just let all the big clubs from Premier League play against each other and have a virtual competition, which means it's actually a marketing extension to the Premier League, rather than saying we're building an ecosystem where we're trying to find the best clubs in the digital world, right? So it's always creating an authentic sports competition with digital means, versus extending your physical means into a digital marketing competition. And I'm just genuinely, right, I believe the power of sports in many ways is to see the best people performing on the highest level. It's really about that. Yes, storytelling is incredibly important. Yes, diversity is incredibly important. All of those things are incredibly important. But in the end of the day, the very simple promise of a sport is competition and seeing who's better. And that's what it makes it unique in the entertainment world. So the minute you're not staying true to that core, it's very, very hard to build a sustainable sport. WWE is one of the very few who have succeeded. Let's see if Kings League is an example, right, with a more entertainment-y way to present football can be successful. But I have high reservations on the very long run that entertainment over competition will win.
Fascinating. Very, very interesting. I'm so conscious of the time. Just lastly, what's not happened yet? Give us a glance, the crystal ball into the future. What haven't we seen yet that you'd like to see? Or what's the big next thing coming down the track?
Look, I think, for me, in, again, the eSports World Cup, which is, my passion project and my mission, and I think every sport always looks at it as a Michael Jordan moment, when you have that clear greatest of all time, the GOAT, right? Yeah. That is what I'm really, 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 really hoping to help to happen, number one. I think number two, the big advantage of esports, it was originally labeled as the biggest disadvantage, but it's the biggest advantage. If you look at it, people thought, these games come and go. But some of them really stay, right? Counter-Strike's there for 20 years. League of Legends is there for 15 years almost. So these disciplines stay, but new ones come. Yeah. Not all the time, not actually every month, not even every year, not every 3 years, but every 4 or 5 years a new genre is born, a new discipline comes. And to have that discipline that is truly global, my kind of hope number two, which is not in my hands, but maybe we can incentivize people to do it. And the kingdom is investing heavily in games as well, so that is another thing. And number three, none of the sports we ever spoke about is built to watch. They're all built to play, and some of them are better to watch,
Yeah.
and some of them are worse, and all of them develop to be, better entertainment products. But none of those was built with the idea of being the marriage between the perfect competitive play and the best entertainment factor to watch. I strongly believe that a kid in a dorm room, mostly a student, will come up with a concept, because that's not going to be done by big corporations. That's not how the world works, right? These true, deep innovation is done by young, playful minds. And someone will come up with a new game, with a new genre, which brings these two things together. And while the barrier to entry with most sports is still very, very high to truly understand those sports, let's not even start to talk about American football, right? But a video game has the opportunity to be so easy to pick up, but still so deep to master and understand, that you can truly start to adore the level of play, and that will be a game changer for that whole industry. But when and how, I don't know. But I don't think it's an if.
I'm sure you're right. The opportunity, the boundless opportunity for creativity and innovation is what is hugely exciting about your whole world, isn't it? Well, I'm so sorry that we've come to the end of what was a very brief discussion. It goes very quickly when you're listening to one of the world greats in any discipline. But Ralf, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure to discuss this with you, and good luck with the World Cup. I'm sure all of us would love to attend.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks very
Thank you.
much.